Hello, everybody. How are you? How's everybody doing? Okay. I'm still, my throat is dry, so you could probably hear me coughing here and there, but hopefully won't be too much of that. So we could have a video um, with no interruptions. But we're going to be drawing. Okay. We're going to be drawing and um, um, yeah, we're gonna be drawing a swan, and I'm gonna go over something to so you could keep all your materials very simple. Um, on what are you gonna use? Okay, so I have the materials is just paper, okay, and pencils. Paper, regular pencil, and um, an eraser on your pencil, and access to sharpen your pencil. That's it. So basically, it's two materials: the pencil and the paper, but we do have to have access to eraser and pencil sharpener, or the mechanical kind. So I'll be talking a little bit about this. I won't go too much in depth because the whole point of the video is also going over these simple materials and kind of keeping it simple. Even though I may talk a little overboard at the beginning of a little bit of the materials, it's just to give you an understanding that with this is enough. Okay, and the graphite in this type of pencil, the common yellow pencil that we find around, it's enough and it's really good. Okay, so my paper has a little bit of texture, just a little bit, not too much, and it's somewhat, you know, a little thicker, not too much more thicker than just regular paper, or print paper, but drawing paper tends to be a little thicker than printing paper. And printing paper, I mean the paper you get when you get a letter on your business letter on your mail, right? That type of paper, 8.5 by 11. That is very very thin, but it's white. Okay, so with graphite, I said it's enough to have the pencil with an eraser because that's it. Okay, that's all you need. I have many more of these ones. So the benefit of having more than one sharpen is that when you need to sharpen your pencil, you put it aside and you grab the next pencil. Okay. And you don't have to waste time sharpening the pencil in a moment where you might be inspired or you need to continue drawing something. Eventually, right, as I run out of my three pencils, I'll have to sharpen them again. But maybe you find the time to do that in a break, a short break or a minute break or something. But the idea of having extra material sometimes is just cut on time, when you don't have to clean your brush because you have more brushes or things like that. Um, the eraser, make sure the eraser works and is good, because in this type of pencils, sometimes the erasers are very hard and actually are useless. And this may be because of the sun, they make them really hard. These are all okay. Yeah, you see this one, the one on this one that I have in my hand is really hard, and I'm pretty sure it's because of more likely exposure to the sun for too long. Um, so it, you know, it's some of them even like kind of draw instead of erase because the redness of the eraser is just becomes um, non-workable. So these yellow pencils you see commonly out in the world around you, you're gonna notice when you look at them, whatever the brand is, have a number two. Okay, doesn't matter the brand. Usually, what you see outside is a number two. I'll explain you what is a number two. And in school, I remember when it was testing time, they say, "Oh, you have to take the test with a number two pencil." Those tests that you have to put the little bubble in. So the 2 is a level of intensity in the graphite in the pencil. Um, or you see a B and a 2. Um, obviously, there are threes, four, five, six, and even 8. I think it goes up to 8. Um, um, and there's an H, there's a B, and I'm saying them in order of lighter to darker, so it will be H, right? H H, H B, then B, um, 2B, which is this. This is the 2B. It just says 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and even 8. Okay, so for example, these two are drawing pencils, and you can see there's a 2B. I'm just waiting for it to focus. There's a 2B. So this pencil is just like this pencil, but right, they sell it to you as a drawing pencil, the blue one. Or there's different colors, could be black, could be right. Um, but you see how the numbers keep going up, and then this is a 6B. So if I make a mark, the 6B will always be darker than the 2B. So just understanding that the numbers goes up. If you want to draw, or you have in your hand or possession a set of drawing pencils, um, then you're good. You're good to go. I'm sorry, you could use them, yeah. But for our drawing today, we'll just use our regular 2 pencil, which is enough. Okay. So before we actually start doing our drawing of a swan, like the title says, um, I'm gonna go over some things here to the corner side. You should do them also with me, and then I'm gonna be talking right now for a while about a little bit of the materials, like I was saying. So you don't have to have it right now, but when you draw in the future or at home, a cloth or a towel or some fabric that has been moist or wet is good to have with you, because your hand will catch some of the graphite that you erase, that's on the paper, that's on the table. So your hand eventually, or your fingers, will get dark and catch graphite in them. I make that exaggeration, but um, you're getting my point. So if you have a wet little towel, face towel, or cloth or fabric, you could rub your hand, get rid of that, dry your hand again, right? Not don't put it wet on your paper, and then you clean your hands like that. Another technique is to have another piece of paper, a second piece of paper. Um, just imagine, and I'm sorry, that this envelope I'm going to show you now is another piece of paper. Um, and we more likely work from left to right, right? And then you put your hand, you rest your hand on the other piece of paper when you have to draw to the left, and you already have something here, so your hand doesn't rub over what you already drew. So if I have here drawn a flower, right, and I have to go back to this area on the left, and I put my hand down, my hand is going to rest on the flower, and I'm going to smudge it. So artists use another piece of paper to rest their hand on top and not smudge the paper. So graphite smudges, and we're going to do a little bit of that. I'm going to show you with your fingers how could you smudge around to diffuse the graphite. The graphite is what's on the tip of the pencil. Okay. um, Yeah, this is graphite. This is not charcoal. Okay, charcoal will be so much more darker. There are charcoals placed on a pencil like this, and I love them. When I work on charcoal, I love to have my charcoal um, on the pencil, and and charcoal is obviously much more darker, more intense, but it's a different material. Okay, but this is something that you could run into or put in your purse or your bag. This type of pencil, as long as you have a pencil sharpener, paper, and that's it, and start drawing. Okay, eraser. You could use the eraser on the pencil or this type of erasers that we see around. Okay, um, just I just want to let you know because we've done this since we were children. This type of erasers, the way they work is they break apart. Okay, eventually you run out of these erasers because they're breaking apart. They're getting destroyed when you erase. So what happened is you with the eraser is collecting the graphite on the paper as it comes apart from the eraser. So when you do this, you see the eraser breaks apart. So I have to get rid of that. There's eraser left on the paper that we brush off carefully. And then the pencil is gone. But the pencil is gone on the paper because it was collected by the eraser. Okay, look at all that left over. So when you brush this off, just be careful, you know, just be careful with your hand or shake your paper, you know. If you have a brush that you will not use in painting or have wet or anything, you could brush it off with a brush carefully. If you're really taking care of a drawing that you really are being very detailed about, there's a mark, there's a pencil mark. I'm gonna erase it. My eraser comes apart, leaves all those pieces around, and I can brush it off. You don't need the brush. You could use your hand, like I'm doing right now, carefully. So don't be asking for a brush, or you don't need a brush. I'm just saying things extras that you could probably gather at home. All right, so let's get started. Oh yeah, and the pencil sharpener is a regular pencil sharpener, right? And usually, sometimes they come in two sizes, like this one has two, a big circle and a small circle. Understand that the big circle is going to make your pencil. Let me use the small hole. The small hole. The small hole will cut your pencil and make it this length. See that? Come on. There you go. The bigger circle will make your pencil shorter. Watch. So usually when my pencil is giving me trouble sharpening, I use the big circle to not be messing around with the length of my tip too much. So this is more shorter. Like you're gonna see less wood. Let me put them right. This is the big hole. This was the smaller hole. The top one was the big hole. You see how there's less wood to see? And it's shorter. So the more narrow or longer the tip, the harder it is to sharpen because it could break, right? So when a pencil is giving me a hard time, I usually use the big hole to to just sharpen it quicker too. It's faster. There's less wood to cut. All right. So and then test, yeah, as you sharpen, just don't just sharpen and pay attention. Look at what's happening. Control your pencil. Be gentle. Let's take care of our materials. Understand what's going on. Have your tip as you want it to be. So it seemed like I cut myself. Um, okay. So this is what we're gonna do. To make something darker, then the darkness our pencil provides will put layers of graphite over more graphite. Okay. So what we're going to do now is create a scale. And there's other videos where I have done this in the past. We're going to create a scale here to the side. And first of all, I'm going to do right now something I don't want anyone to do ever. Okay. Which is, and children tend to do this when you ask them to darken something, because I guess they're so used to crayon or something like that, when they color with crayon. And when you color with a crayon, um, you put the crayon and that's it. That's the color you get. You cannot really create layers that much with crayon. I guess you could if you're gentle, but usually children just go at it and color, right? And they just put the color down. So then when you give them a pencil, they do the same thing and they just go really rough and look, make that mark and kind of make a mark like that, very dark, to color something dark. I'm gonna wait for it to focus, so don't worry, okay? Until it focus, I won't. There you go, and make a mark like that. And a mark like that is very hard. Sometimes you could even like dent the paper, and this shuts down the paper that's under. It's just, you know what I mean? It's like rough and hard, and sometimes I don't know. It's just not. We could get that same darkness in the following way, which is what I prefer you to do. Okay, so follow me here. When I say we're gonna create layers, we're gonna start softly and try to make a square. It doesn't matter which way the square is pointing. This one is kind of like a diamond. Um, and that's it. That's it. I'm gonna actually let me start over to show you that I could even be more gentle than that. So and I'm gonna keep the square kind of straight, not a diamond, but look, I'm being very gentle with my pencil, creating this square. That's it. That's it. Now, let's see. Let me do it down here. I'm gonna do the same thing down here. Actually, no. Let's. This is what I mean. So in that same layer, I'm gonna go over it again. I'm gonna do the same thing over that. So you do this with me to the side of your paper. You see how now it's getting darker? Let's do it a third time. It's gonna keep getting darker. We're gonna do it a fourth time. So this is the fourth layer. So you're working by layering up. This is the fourth time. We're gonna do a fifth. And the paper, if you see, still breathes through the marks that we're making. This is the fifth mark. You see how you can still see the paper breathe? You're not shutting the paper or the light through. To get to that darkness, we obviously need more layers. To get to this darkness, hold on. There you go. We need more layers of that. So this was fifth. Let's do a seventh. And let's do an eighth. That's seven. And let's do an eighth. Okay. So what we're gonna do now, this is when we do 8 layers, is that after this is 8 layers. Okay. Same thing without having to shut down the. It's more beautiful. It's more gentle, more attentive, right? More pleasing to the eye. So what we're gonna do now, because I just made this mark right in the middle, and I was gonna use this side here. We're gonna create. That's eighth, right? Yeah. So yeah. Um, I'm gonna make this mark right next to it because it was the example. And I'm gonna erase this here. Because what I want you to do is just like this looks like a square, we're gonna create a like a scale. Let me show you. That was 8, right? So we have 8 already done. 8, 7, and we could write the number right next to it. So this was 8. This is 7. I'm counting down. 8, 7, 6. We've done this before in a video, but I'm doing it for those who are new or need to catch up and refresh. So draw with me. Usually you can go up or down. This time we started up because I did it just to demonstrate this thing darkness. But we're gonna do 8 squares. This is the 8th. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is our scale. So I made like a not a ruler, like a band. And this is 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do you see that? Can you draw the before we fill in the square? Can everybody in the side of your paper do this column and split your column on 8 squares? Even if you don't have this top square done, don't worry about it. We'll get it filled. Okay. Do that with me. Sharpen your pencil if you need to sharpen it because we use it a lot over here, right? Does everybody has their ladder going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? So I'm taking my time. I want to make sure I don't rush you, but you should have this ladder now, and now we're gonna fill it in, okay, with our graphite. So just like we layered this up to 8 up here, now we're individualizing those layers. So basically, and I'm gonna try to get the camera closer. Sorry, so I'm doing these steps. So here's the whole ladder or scale. You should have that on the side of your paper from 1 to 8. Don't touch the edge of the paper. You see how there's a space here? Leave it like a column, a huge rectangle, very long, that split it into 8 squares or small rectangles. But I'm going to bring the camera closer so you can see what I'm going to do for each square. So the number 1, we're going to fill it in very lightly. Very extremely light. As you do the first one, you could do them all the same way, okay? But we're gonna do square by square individually. You're gonna see what I'm trying to say right now. So again, we're gonna do each square and finish it, but at the same time, let me give you an example. The second one, you're gonna do the same thing you do on the first one, same level of lightness. That's one. You see how they both look the same? But the second one gets two layers. The first one was one, the second one was will get two layers. So that was one layer. Here's the second. See that? Doesn't have to be perfect, just feel that area. So the third one gets the first layer, second layer, and third layer. And do it by number. Don't keep coloring over and over. So do one. That's one for the third one. This is the second one. So now the third one should look like the second one. You see? And this is the third layer. So now the third one is going to look a tiny little bit darker than the second one. And it does. So what I meant is that another way of doing this column would have been to do the entire thing with one layer. And then you do the entire thing from two up with a second layer. Now you do from three up a third layer. From fourth up a fourth layer. But we're going to do each square at a time just to show you how different it is. So let's show you here how four is going to have four layers. So let's do the first one. One, two, three. So now it should look like the third. They should look the same. And they do. And now the fourth should be darker than the third. And use your eye, even if each layer it's maybe the same, then use your eye to put a little more weight in it. One, two, three, four. Now the fifth gets one. You see, that's why it's lighter right now, because he only has one. Two, three. This is the fifth one. Sorry, the fifth number. Four. So now they look the same. And now fifth is going to make it darker. This is what we were doing with the eighth one there. So the sixth gets one, two, three, four. It's still lighter than the fifth. Five and six. This needs a little more darker. The seven gets one, two, three, four, five, and six. Oh, and seven and seven. That's seven. You see how it's darker than the six? And look at eight. Let's give eight another color. It looks like the seven. So then we'll give it another shot to the eight. Okay, so that's our scale. Look how pretty it looks. You can look at it like this too. I know it's shining, but it goes from light to dark. So this is what happened. I spent over a year, actually 2 years, making drawings actually spending. So think about this. I spend a week, 6 hours or more just doing drawings. And in those 6 hours, maybe three or four drawings, different drawings. And for each drawing, I have to do this. Okay. I will have to do it to begin with this scale. And after doing this scale, um, I could use the whole scale for my drawing. Now follow me here. I could use my whole scale when I draw. That means that as we draw, you can see all these tones, the lighter tone and the dark tone. Or I could say, okay, I'm going to use the number 2, the 4th, and the 8th. And the tones you will see in my drawing are going to match the 2, the 4, and the 8th. You're going to kind of hope to get that tone and that idea. It's okay if it's a little different, but those are the contracts you're going to create rather than having to use them all. Maybe the next day I will use 1, 3, and 5. And that means that I will use the tones 1, 3, and 5. And you should not see anything in my drawing darker in this the number 6, 7, 8. Does that make sense? So my drawing will have 1, 3, and 5 of tones. The numbers, the tones that represent those numbers, basically. Anyway, we're going in this drawing today, and I'm sorry for the rant or talking so much. We haven't really got started to our drawing, but I hope this makes sense. You do not have to do this every time you draw, okay? So at the end of the drawing today, I'm gonna tell you what to do with this, which will be, I'll remind you, but it will be to cut it with scissors. You don't have to cut it right at this moment because we're gonna use it to refer to it as we draw. Um, and many times you could have a number 5, a tone you do as number 5, and with the eraser you take a little bit of that and you bring the tone down. So this is tones, tonality. When you take a black and white photograph, you're going to see these tones. Maybe you see them more darker, a 9 or a 10, or even this could be broken down instead of from 1 to 8, from 1 to 20, from 1 to 50. If it's from 1 to 50, that's a lot of in between tones, right? A lot of different ones. You could have used, like I said, let me give you an example. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that here. You could use for a drawing a scale that goes like this of 3, but instead of going from 1 to 1, 2, and 3, right? It's like I said, it's 1, 4, and 8. So it will look kind of like this. Very dark for the 8. I'm just going over maybe many times to make that number 8. The number 1, which was very light, and the number 4, which was kind of like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 8 should be darker. Does that make sense? You see how this one, even though there's 3 squares, 1, 2, 3, it actually represents the number 1, the number 4, and the last one, the number 8. So I could make my drawing using only these 3 tones, and you won't see anything kind of in between them or in between here because I'm just using those 3. But today we're going to use all of this. We're not going to question it, but the skill of matching your drawing with the scale that you choose to makes you be really good at controlling your grays or your tones. Okay, so that means that your drawing will be more interesting because there's many different tones. Does that make sense? Rather than me drawing just not looking, not caring, this is gray, this is dark, this is light. This scale helps you diversify your tones and be more aware of what should be lighter, what should be darker. And something you should always ask yourself is 2 questions when you draw, when you look at something to draw it, and when you're done with your drawing. And it's the following: what is the darkest area that I'm looking at? Which translate, what is the darkest area that I have to have in my drawing? That has to be the number 8. Does that make sense? And the other question is, what is the lightest area that I'm looking at, that I'm going to draw? Which translate, what is the lightest area that's going to be in my drawing? And in that case, actually, may not have to be the number 1. It could be the white paper. So we could have here the whiteness of the paper. Excuse me. Okay, let's start drawing, and hopefully this all makes sense. But at the end, you could cut this with a scissor. Excuse me, with scissors, and you can post it on um, in front of you in the area where you draw, so you could look at it and refer to it. I wouldn't carry this with me or mess around too much with it because of what I told you about smudging. Look what happens when something rubs up on graphite, like your finger or any other material. Look, it smudges. Right? You're gonna lose that intensity. You're gonna lose the intensity. You're gonna lose the quality of your drawing and the quality of your scale. So maybe put it in a Ziploc bag to carry it around, but I wouldn't carry it around. I will just with tape put it in the wall in front of me in the area that I draw so I could look at it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is don't have things rub against it, or, same thing with your drawing. Once you're done with a drawing of graphite, put it inside your drawing pad. Don't be messing around too much with it because you're going to get it smudged like that. Okay. All right. So let's start drawing. Our swan will be in the water. It will be here. And half of his body, right, will be in the water. So let's make the contact of his body in the water kind of like a curved semicircle here, like this, right in the middle of the paper. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the paper, the length of your paper, right, horizontally. This is horizontal or landscape. When I flip it like this, it's called vertical or portrait. So keep it like this, and then right in the middle. So you're going to use your eyes. You don't need a ruler. Just look at the paper and split it with your vision, with your eye, with a top and bottom. So right in the middle, I'm going to put like a curved line like this. It's not going to cover too much space. It's like a smiley, not too curved. Okay, not too curved. Just right in the middle, not too big either. That's where the body of the swan, which is going to be here, touches the water. You know what we could do lightly? I made that dark, but lightly, I could do an oval, like an egg. See the egg? And that may help you see the body of the swan. I'm going to bring this top of the oval down, and I'll explain you why. I'm bringing it down. I'm making my oval more narrow, and I'm going to erase this top down. So we did the oval. That's the good thing about drawing with the graphite. You could erase. So we did the oval, but I made it more narrow. Why? Because the swan will be an oval. Will be an oval. Sorry, the swan will be an oval. But because half of it is in the water, the other half of the oval, it's underwater. So that's why our top became more narrow. That's it. Okay. Now let's see what we can do. Is everybody here? Kind of looks like an eye, like, so just get that part done. I'm taking it slow. If you come in now, don't, and you start seeing this scale, don't worry, go back on the video later. Anybody that comes in halfway through, but I want to take it slow and make sure that everybody's with me. This scale part, we're gonna cut this here. At the end, I'm gonna do it to me just to show you. As I'm gonna cut right through that line at the end. with our scissors. And you could, when you have access to scissors, you could cut yours. You know, my professor used to say, I will come in and say, oh, drawing. He was highly, okay, use 7 4 2 in this drawing. And then the next drawing, he will come over and say, all right, use 1 2 and 3. So I will have to use these tones. So we will use numbers and challenge ourselves with our drawing. But we're going to use all these tones to make sure, or the majority of them. Maybe 4 and 5 look almost the same, and there's not much difference in your eyes. But anyway, so this is the body of the swan. We're gonna do a tail in a moment, but we're gonna do the head too. So for the head, it's like a hook. So it's gonna be tricky, like a hanger. So like a candy cone, candy cane. So go up and curve, and we're gonna embellish this. Don't worry. So up and and curve. You see that? You see that curve? So now let's embellish that curve even more. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that my curve up here wider and expand it here in the back. Look how I make it wider. Curve it in and come back out like right here. So it doesn't touch the bottom, but it touches here. So we did the hook. So you knew the hook. But now you're kind of embellishing it by making more exaggerated curves. So it curves more. Now it's a neck. So we need to make it thicker, not this thing, right? So we're going to make another line that shows the thickness of it. Now where the neck meets the body is more thicker, right? And where the head is thicker too than the rest of the neck. So follow me here. I'm going to go big down here because it's thicker. Big, big, big. Come more closer to my neck. Closer. And now I'm going to open for the head. And that's it. Now I'm going to erase the pencil that's inside. That was our first candy cane shape. You see that? You see how the bottom here is thicker than here? This is very important. And we're going to do that. The top of the head actually goes bigger here. And the beak. So try to replicate that shape. I'm going to leave the camera here for a moment so everybody can do what I... You see how it's taking shape? We're going to use for this drawing our eraser and pencil. And I want you, this is really important to hear, I want you to use your eraser as a drawing tool. An eraser is not to correct mistakes. There's no such thing as mistakes. You're just drawing. You're just creating something. And the eraser helps you draw. You can make a whole drawing and finish it up with an eraser to do highlights, clear areas that are lighter, and that's it. That's still drawing. You're not erasing things you did wrong. You're just drawing. Okay, everybody got that neck and head. So the head starts way up here when the top line comes up. See how it's thicker, kind of like down here. And then the bottom of the beak, from the head and the beak, you could do it as a straight line. That's okay. But very important is the bottom here of the neck has to become thicker, because it's like where I forgot the word of it, but that's where their food goes. When they're eating, this gets inflated, right? Because they're getting themselves full. So the neck base has to be thicker. Okay. The tail, I'll leave the camera right here. The tail will be very simple. The tail, down here at the end of this oval tip, we're going to go, rather than continuing, we're going to go up a little, not straight up, but go more up than if I continue this line, it will curve, right? But I'm going to continue this line a little more up, a little more higher, just a little bit of it. It's not a big tail. And then it comes down wider like a triangle. That's it. That's all there is. Okay. It's gonna be a simple drawing. Okay. All right, so let's keep the camera here. Halfway through the body, okay, let's make another curved line right here. Halfway through the body. Don't touch the end, don't touch the beginning, just right here in the middle. Now, towards the end of the middle, towards the end, not at the end here, but at the end of this curved line that we just did, do some zigzags like this, zigzags. And now we're gonna expand the back of the swan, so higher. Okay, watch what's gonna happen, because these are his wings. Actually, we could probably keep going. We could probably keep going with this. Okay, so just like the tail went up here, keep going with this zigzagging out. Don't be afraid to go out. And then the wing comes up higher. So it's not the back here. It kind of comes higher as a triangle. So look, I need to make another curve up here like this. Okay. A little curve right in the middle, right here. And then we have our wing. That's our wing. So basically, I kept on doing my zigzags in an angle. You see the angle? Up to here. Kind of matches the tail shape. And then for the top, it's also in an angle. See, my hand is keeping, sorry, my pencil is keeping the angle, angle, angle. But as I make this curve for this angle, it right in the middle of the curve, I went in and came out. So there's a dent here is what I mean, a little dent. So these little curve situations, what they do is they make things more real, because if we do everything just one curve, it's too simplified, kind of like cartoony. So the fact that I went in this big curve, I went in, down, and back out. So there's a dent here. The fact that there's a dent there, makes it more real. It's a little more organic. So let's erase the inside now of this oval back right here. And we have our wing. You know, he has two wings. We could be looking at perfectly from the side. But if we make the same wing next to it like this here, but a little bit distance, and the angle that we did on the back of this one here, you see, we kind of come in and just give it a little glance on this one here. I don't want to get you lost, but look at this and try to replicate it. So what happened, and I'm going to erase some of the inside here of our oval because we don't need it anymore. And I'm being careful to rub off the leftover eraser. Same thing with the inside here. But we have the shape of our swan. Awesome. Um, I went in here a little too on my curve. I curved, went in, and came out for the neck. Anyway, so excuse me. What's happening is I did the wing, the first wing, right? Angle, angle, and but in a curved way. Yes, it's in an angle, diagonal, but it's curvy, curve, and then curve. But my curve up here, which is a very big curve, or yeah, curve um, mark, I went in and then out. And for the second wing on the other side, I left a space. Look, this right here replicates here, but there, right? This one is here. This one is a little higher. So there's a distance between the wings, so it looks like the body's in between both wings, right? And the same dent, and that's it. So he's lifting his wings. Um, a swan has a little mark in the face, so I want to emphasize that now that we're here and our camera is very close. But look at this, and if yours is not getting the shape, erase it and get it back. Erase it and get it back. Um, if I went too fast, sorry, but the neck, as curvy as it looked, it all started with a shape like this. It all started with a cane shape, but we embellished it. We curved down here, we went up, and we curved wider up here. So wider up here, and then we went in and then back out here. Same thing with the second line. So there's one line, and there's one line here, and there's one line here. We need two lines because they both in between show the thickness of the neck. Right? This is not a one line. Right? The two lines define the volume of the thickness of the neck and the head. And now we have a body here. A positive body, right, of the swan. And anything behind it or around it will be the negative part of our drawing. Think of that too. Drawings and artwork is full of negatives and positive. What is the negative? What is the positive, right? So think of like a cutout. If I were to cut this out, right, and I hold the cutout, that's my positive, the swan, and everything around it is the negative. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to get you confused with other terms and things, but in this term, it was necessary to say that so you can define and see the swan for itself. We can see the swan for the mass and form that it is. Okay, so here it is. So a swan has a defined kind of like curve here. Let's get the camera closer to the head. We're gonna make things darker here. So let's make a mark, kind of thick, curve like this here. And went in on the top here, like where we have our nose. It's not that they have a nose, but this is gonna get a little darker here. And where the eye is, which is about here, that's actually in a dark area. So let's darken that. Forget about the eye for now. We don't have to do the eye, but darken that area right there. That's it. So you have that kind of shape. So does that make sense? Is we curve the beak to define it. We went darker in the area that is their nose or breathing, and then we darken like with a circle where the eye will be, which is in here. I'm gonna pull out so you can see it better, and now it definitely looks like like a swan. I'm coming in on the neck, so the neck comes in into the body. Okay. All right. So now let's shape. So one thing we can do, remember, just like we make, this is something I tend to do sometimes, not all the time, but when I draw and I know I'm going to shade with graphite, is we make these lines dark enough that we're still going to see them if I give everything a shade of light graphite. So just like we did our layers, you could treat your drawing like that. Okay. So this is what I mean. We could clearly shade very lightly the entire drawing with no worries. Just keep that number two maximum, one and two. The way we're gonna light up everything. And remember how I said we're gonna use the eraser to create highlights? So don't worry about the things that are supposed to be very bright, sorry, or light, because we're gonna use the eraser for that. So be gentle, use the side of your pencil, hold your pencil that you're only rubbing the side of it. So if you're struggling with the shape of your swan, something I want you to think about is simplifying shapes. So there's a lot of ovals in this drawing of the swan we did today. And I'm going to go over it in a moment with you, but I could say them aloud. I can see the wings are like ovals. I can see the whole body of the swan being a huge oval that I already told you maybe half of it or some part of it is underwater. So we have to take that in account when we draw it. Um, the head, the tip of the head, not the beak, thus looks like a small oval. Okay. So I layer everything. I know you cannot see, it's still light, but in front of me, it's very light for the video and the camera. But I shaded, you see, the whole drawing. I'm playing with my light a little so you can see it. But I'm not going to draw this, but I'm just going to, with my pencil, move around to shape, to show you the shape. But look how the head is an oval. The head is an oval. The wing is a huge oval that's like angle. It's in an angle, just like the angle that my pencil is following. So big oval. Same thing with the one behind. It's just that the one behind, we have to account that this one is in front of it. So we only see that part. And then the body of the whole swan is a big oval. The neck, like I said, please consider that we started with a straight and curved cane shape, but we embellished that. We didn't keep the cane body straight. We curved it, curved, and then curved to embellish it. I just made that mark of the cane line. And now, anyway, all right. So now that we have everything great, you could carefully, check this out, rub your hand in everything. And what that does, not too hard, that um, blends in the shading. It's like shading, okay? You're softening the graphite, you're softening it. But that shows that, look at my fingertips. This is what I meant. Just now consider and be aware that your fingers are dirty. This is why after this video, next time you draw at home, I recommend you have a soaked or wet towel and or paper towel, and you rub your fingers there and then dry them quickly, and then your hand is clean. Okay. But for now on, I have to be aware that my fingers are dirty, and wherever I put them, they're gonna make a mark. But right now, my drawing, look how soft and that graphite tone is. It's definitely that number one. See the number one? Okay. And now we start darkening. softening other areas, giving it shape. So the inside of the neck, I'm going to shade it. Maybe it's a number 2 or 3. Let's get this. Sometimes it focuses and I apologize. Sometimes it doesn't. Um, see how everything is a little softer? Um, the inside will be this right side, not the left, the right side. So I'm going to shade that a little and be gentle with a number maybe 2, between 2 and 3. You could look at your scale to match that tone, or you could use your eye because I said it will be softer. This is giving the neck volume now that everything is gray. So let me give you an example. I'm going to go ahead on a step that I was going to do later on, but just to show you what I mean and the beauty of this process. So we're darkening this right side, right? So that means the left side more likely will have a highlight. So I'm going to do the highlight now just to show you the difference. So just like this area is darker, which is the right side, I'm going to take my eraser and pass it around the left side. To show the whiteness of the swan. You see how the neck kind of became more contrasted because the neck is white against the even background. So anyway, so you could darken the neck on the inside a little even more than number 3, maybe a number 4 to this edge right here, right to the edge. Okay. So this is where you spend your time and really it's a little more crafty, but anyway. So now we create volume on our feathers, not feathers, but the body. The beak can be darkened too, maybe, and separated, I guess. Um, the 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 wing that's in the back should be darker, so let's give it a darker tone. So I'm making it darker with another layer, and I'll do a third one in a moment. So this is the second, and this is the third. When you use your fingers to shade, you get rid of that line you created when you were making the mark. So when we make a mark, sometimes you could leave the line of your direction. Sometimes you want to show that. Sometimes you don't want to show that. So if you don't want to show this line, then you use your finger to blur everything and it gets rid of that mark line. So now my feather, sorry, my wing in the back is a little darker than the one in front. So now when we shade, you could shade in a curvy way. Just like our zigzag, you can make more zigzags. Look, maybe another zigzag here. You can make those marks a little darker because I'm going to darken the entire wing a little more on the outside. So does that make sense? Don't worry, we're gonna use our eraser at the end to make highlights of everything. So look how our wing became more had more volume because inside we did with the side of our pencil, not the tip. I used my side of the pencil. I did those zigzags and I shade them. And I did 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. So I left space in between. Come on. Focus for me. There you go. I left space in between so it's lighter to show the darker zigzag lines. The body can also have some zigzags, especially towards the tail. And that's it. That's it, everybody. Don't worry about the body itself. I could shade it a little darker, and then with the highlights, when we do the eraser, everything comes back. Perfect. Okay. So I darken here the moment. Actually, no, don't worry. Always the eraser. I shouldn't have darkened the body here. I'll tell you why in a moment. Okay. So let's tackle the swan for now with the eraser. So I'm erasing in the areas that were already left lighter in between the feathers here of the wings in this tip. But the key when you make highlights is don't erase everything, right? Leave some gaps. Sorry, leave some areas gray. So a swan is white, obviously, but we're using gray to emphasize some tones. So I'm erasing here and there and making a mess, but you get the idea. The neck, yes, that left side of the neck is going to be lighter than the right side, where is the side we shaded. Okay. All right. I want this to be focused so you can see it more in detail. But you saw the pencil, um, sorry, the eraser highlights and makes everything pop up. Okay, but all right, so far, so good. I hope you're with me. We did the scale, we did the swan, we shaded the swan, right? Now, I want you to think of just like this is kind of like gray. When you really think about it, I grade the paper. The paper became kind of gray, and then the eraser highlight the white, brought back the white of the paper, and it's even whiter or lighter than the background because the background right now is gray. So that's why the swan kind of popped up because it has a tone, a whiteness that's not even in the background. So that's why it kind of really stands out. So I'm rubbing off the leftover eraser. So now we're going to tackle the water of the around the swan, and I want you to think of this very carefully. I'm moving my pencil, look, following the shape of the oval of the swan. You see how the bottom here is like this curve? So I'm going to make that curve bigger around the swan. And I'm going to move it, not touching the paper, just move the pencil above the paper. I'm going to move it around the swan. Now, I'm moving my pencil, not touching the paper, just that shape. We're going to touch the paper in a moment. But when we make this mark very softly next, we cannot make the mark on the actual swan, okay? This is for the water. So I'm going to make it, look, I'm going to make it here. See that? Let's do it again. Let's do it again. You see how there's like an oval around the swan? Now let's do another one wider. Every time has to be wider and bigger because you're going out. You're going out. Softly, another curve, softly, a few more, and that's it. Not too much. Okay, we're doing this very softly. And on the back, maybe just curve lines behind the swan. Okay, it has to be behind this one. because the swan is on top of the water. So these lines have to be behind the swan and they have to curve following the mark the swan is leaving in the water. These are called ripples. When you throw a stone in the pond or a lake, these are the ripples that it makes. Excuse me, do you see that? So I'm gonna kind of make this here more spread, more wide, more oval. And that's it. This was so soft that I know you guys can see it at home on the video, but I did it so soft that it's very gentle. So let's soften this and make these lines thicker, thicker. Maybe a number 2 or 3, because the whole paper may be between 1 and 2, the gray tone. Okay, so now we're gonna make the swan kind of cast a shadow in the water, or have an area in the water where the swan is definitely leaving a shade or a shadow. So the fact that also some of these lines are not touching, so look how this one is here, this one is here, but I don't continue, there's a gap here. So, and I'm going to discontinue this one. This one is continuous, but I may erase here to break it apart. So now we have it here, stops and continues here, because over here now it's just softer. So the fact that they're not all connected, so I broke this one too. So now this one comes around, stops here and continues here. We don't want the ripples perfectly circles. We want sometimes to break them up. Excuse me, that's what happens in nature. The circles are there, but visually our eyes don't see the perfect circle because light reflects differently. Okay, so I think this is enough. I don't want to make this too dark, these lines, but just like let's do the highlights in a moment. So right in the middle, we're going to start shading, not on the swan, on the water under the swan. We're going to start making darker that area. Look, just under the swan, this area. And when we shade the water area, we're going to keep shading, how could I say this? On the same amount of space the swan takes over above it. So if the swan is this big, our shading area is going to be that big. Does that make sense? I cannot shade the whole thing because the swan is not huge, right? I cannot make it too small because if I just shade this little area here, we know the swan takes over more than that. So look how I'm shading everything under the swan, but right at the space that the swan also takes above it. So maybe about here I have to stop. You see, about here, because this is the same mass the swan takes. Does that make sense? And let's really get darker as it's closer to the swan. Let's get it a little darker. In the water, not the swan. Let's get really darker. So what happens with shades, look at this. Today, when you go out and you see the shadow of a tree, you're going to see that where the shadow touches the tree actually at the bottom, is going to be darker. So as the shadow gets closer to the object is a shadow of, that area is darker because the ground is closer to the object, is taking a shade, right? As the distance is more farther away, it dissipates, it diffuses. Okay, so now I think this is enough. I'm gonna move on to kind of wrap up. I know there's a highlight. Look where my finger is. There's a highlight about here with my light. So if I turn my paper a little, you can see what I did. You see how it looks better. So again, right now it looks funny because what you see here on the video is the reflection of my light. But if I turn the paper, you see, you can see what I did actually. It's much more darker than what it is. So that's what I want you to do, okay? So sorry about the position of my light, but I want you, when you shade your under your swan, you get it pretty dark. But again, it's a darkness by layers. Look, please. Sorry, I keep moving. but it's a darkness by layers. I never shut down the paper like rubbing my pencil too hard on the paper. I layer it up so the paper can still breathe through. That's a good shot right there, this one. I know it's in an angle, but you see how it's dark, but it's still, because it was layer, um, the paper can be still seen through. Okay. Sorry about the reflection. Doesn't matter where I put it. Oh, maybe here. Over to this side that is less reflective. Yeah, then let's work here. It's less reflected than here. You see how here is shining? I just made a mark. Um, all right. So over here, there's less reflection. Perfect. So now with our eraser, guess what? Which is going to be beautiful. Follow me here. I'm excited. We're going to make a, with our eraser, we're going to make a thin, in most of them, line of highlights on the same curves. Look. And get in that darkness. This is what's going to make the water really looks like water, because these highlights that are curved, just like the ovals of the ripples right next to these dark marks, that's exactly what happens in nature. Oop, I erased some of the neck. Follow me? And maybe back here is just lines that are straight, but not too many, okay, of the white, of the eraser. We don't want to make too many of them, but you get the idea. And I'm gonna use my finger to soften that. Okay, but down here, when these highlights get into the darkness here of the shade, of the shadow, this really looks good, you see? Because that's actually really what happens in nature. The sun and the light comes through the the shading. Okay, does that make sense? You see how in front of the swan right here kind of looks very realistic, but it's because that's what happens in nature. We can highlight in the darkness, in the shade. The sun goes through, the water is being bending the light. Okay. That's our swan. So I'm gonna stop here. I want you to look at it. I hope you see how the back is a little more. Come on. But you could always retouch it, play with it. With the pencil, you're thinning those highlights that the eraser. Sometimes the eraser, the downside of the eraser is that it's too thick. So we don't have a very thin eraser to make a thin line. But then you could go back with the pencil and go around it, making marks and making the highlight thinner. If that makes sense. I'm making the highlight thinner. Oops. You see? And when my hand touches, you see what I've always been saying, it dirties the paper. So let me cut what I have said that I was gonna cut here, which is our my my scale. Just so I get a straight line when I cut. I could have folded the paper, but I'm gonna get rid of this, and you're gonna get rid of yours too. Not get rid, sorry. Not get rid, sorry. I didn't mean to say get rid. You're going to cut your scale so you could put it up on the wall in the area where you'll be doing drawings, so you can refer to it and you could have this scale. It doesn't have to be vertical, it could be horizontal. Something to refer to. Again, don't carry it around, because look, it's gonna get dirty, it's gonna get smushed, and then you're gonna lose the differences between them. But here's our swan. I think when I move it to my right, it's less reflective. Like what I mean is down here, you can see it here. The light reflects this part here, while over here you can see a little better. So I know it looks very good. Yours again, get that shape of the actual um, swan gray. So before we move into the shading of the swan, you have to make sure that the shape of your swan matches, right? The shape of what a swan should look like. Um, okay. I think the neck here rests more on the water. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. And then I hope it was a very useful class, helpful, because you could try it again and draw it again. But the main lesson of today was as we shade that contrast of using our scale to refer to and create these tones. So these are tones. And I didn't emphasize using all of them, but I try to match that whatever was very dark was as dark as my highest dark here, number 8. Maybe this wing can be more softer, the transition of the highlights, maybe. Um, but if you put your attention and you're careful, you know, um, you could create more feather effects or things like that. But you get the idea. But remember, the swan is white, so do erase with your eraser to create the white of the swan, but leave some grays, leave some tones that are gray. That way, the drawing actually is actually very interesting to look at with all those tones. Perfect. I'm going to wrap it up like this, and I'm just going to finish by you see how this line here to the left of the swan neck is right outlined in dark. Sometimes, or more likely, we could get rid of the intensity of this line by shading the background darker. Um, if that makes sense. So basically, what I'm saying is this back here will be a little darker, and it matches the line, and it kind of softens that harsh. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So by darkening a little bit of the things that's touching that part, and that's the game also of the word claroscuro, right? This is dark, the background is light. This is light, the background is dark. So claroscuro is a game between the dark tone against the lighter tone. Great. I'm going to show this closer. Hopefully it won't do that shiny reflection. But you see that my paper has actually texture. So if your paper doesn't have that little tiny texture, don't worry. But you'll see that if when I show the close up. But it's still a very thin paper to work with. And then we have our swan. Okay. Go back if you want to redo the drawing. Go back to retouch your drawing. Pause it. I hope I wasn't going that fast. But everything is a step. We work all together. For your drawing to look proportionate, you got to get those shapes first. The shape of the swan, how it actually looks like, and then you do the shading. Um, but it'd be hard to do everything and then go back and erase because the swan doesn't have the shape you want it. Try to get that before you do the shading. And like I said, this one has a lot of oval basic shapes that later you could um, tweak a little, like the wing. We tweak it by going in and out, but it's still an oval shape. An oval shape the body, a kind of oval shape the tail, pointy. The head is a small oval, and the neck, even though it's like an S curve, a very curvy neck, you can see that it kind of loops like a cane, like a candy cane. And little, just look at things. What is the basic form? Do that basic form, light in pencil, and then um, develop it into what other details it does have. Great. So here's the head of our swan. You see that my paper has a lot of texture, so that's why it looks like that. The neck, the body, the tail, the wing. But let me point out here, you see how in the water between the wings, right? Sorry, in between the neck and the wings, you see in the water how there's highlights that are more white. This is white because it was erased. And then above it, there's a darker mark. Everything is gray. And then I went and erase here so it's white, erase here so it's white, make a line here, erasing because it's white. So those that erasing, here you can see it in the dark shade. That erasing created a highlight of water between the dark shadow. So this was shaded dark. And then I went back with the eraser. We went back with the eraser to create these highlights. They do look like highlights because they're also curving. They're taking the curve of what the space the swan is taking. So they're curving around the swan. And because they're curving around the swan, it does looks like the swan is creating those ripples. Okay? Very soft, very gentle, dark when it needs to be dark, which is the shadow and right. And looking at the scale, you can see, am I going too far? The darkest part will be the shadow down here of the swan. But follow your scale. You don't have to do it all, but maybe you're choosing the number, certain numbers of this scale. It's good reference. We definitely didn't just use these three, right? There was other numbers in between. We definitely use 1, 2. I don't know about 8, but maybe very close to 8 in this shadowing. 5, 4, Um, these matches. Yeah, you could take more time to soften. Very soft. Look at my marks down here with the pencil. Very soft. Could be very gentle with a pencil. Just be gentle. Build on it. If you need to erase it. But it's better to build layering. So be gentle with your pencil. You have a great pencil, the number 2 pencil, which is a regular pencil we usually have. Can I bring the camera all the way down here? So it doesn't cause a reflection. Yep. Perfect. So I'll leave it like this, and you can pause it and look at the swan in this corner or part, because it's not giving us the reflection of the lamp down here. Perfect. Enjoy, and I hope you learn a lot today. Yeah, gentle and softly when shading, and look at my fingers. Just now, wash your hands, right? And especially this part of your finger, the bottom, look, gets dirty, and that's what I was talking about. Then we put our hand on top of the drawing, and we may smoosh the drawing. So when you're done with your drawing, put it inside your drawing pad or more papers. Okay. Have a great rest of the day, and stay safe, healthy. Wishing you the best, and keep doing art and draw.